The conference room at the United Nations Special Research Facility felt more like a morgue than a place of scientific inquiry. Harsh fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the polished oak table, illuminating the faces of 6 senior officials whose expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Dr. Elena Rodriguez knew she was walking a razor's edge. Her fingers, calloused from years of fieldwork, traced the edge of a holographic display that seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Quantum-encrypted data fragments danced across the projection, anomalies that defied conventional explanation. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "what I'm about to present will fundamentally challenge everything we understand about our place in the universe." Admiral Thomas Keegan, a granite-faced veteran with more decorations than most museums, leaned back in his chair. "Doctor, we've heard extraordinary claims before. Your reputation precedes you, and not always favorably." Elena knew exactly what he meant. 10 years ago, her groundbreaking research into quantum archaeological signatures had been systematically discredited. 2 of her research team had died in what was ruled a laboratory accident. She knew better. The holographic display shifted, revealing a series of intricate data patterns. Each fragment was a piece of a complex puzzle, signals that didn't originate from any known human or terrestrial source. "These are not random transmissions," Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. "These are structured communications, deliberately masked to appear as background radiation. But they're not. They're surveillance logs." A murmur rippled through the room. Dr. Marcus Holloway, the facility's chief scientific advisor, leaned forward, his cybernetic eye, a replacement after a classified incident, flickered with enhanced processing, analyzing the data in real time. "Impossible," he muttered, but his tone suggested otherwise. Elena knew the weight of her next words would determine everything. She activated the final layer of encryption, a technique she'd developed from her father's unfinished research, a technique that had cost him his life. The holographic display exploded into a 3-dimensional map of stellar coordinates. Intricate lines connected various points, forming a network that was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. "We are being observed," Elena stated flatly. "And not just observed, cataloged, analyzed, potentially controlled." The room fell silent. Admiral Keegan's fingers drummed against the table. "Controlled by whom?" "The Zornak Collective," Elena replied. Her pronunciation was perfect, a result of years of studying intercepted communications. A civilization so advanced that our entire technological history would be less than a footnote in their archives. She brought up a series of spectral analyses, quantum signature comparisons that showed deliberate interference patterns in human technological development. Moments of innovation, calculated setbacks, a chess game played across decades, with humanity as unwitting pawns. "Look here," she said, highlighting a specific data cluster. "Every major technological breakthrough in the last 50 years, quantum computing, advanced materials science, genetic research, shows signs of subtle manipulation, not direct intervention, but guidance." Dr. Holloway's cybernetic eye was now fully engaged, processing information at speeds that would make supercomputers look archaic. "These interference patterns, they're too precise to be random. But the complexity suggests something beyond simple observation. Elena's next revelation would push them past the point of no return. "My parents didn't die in a research accident," she said quietly. "They were getting too close to understanding this network. Their work in quantum archaeology was tracking something the Zornak wanted to remain hidden." A personal data projection materialized, fragments of her parents' last research, annotated with her own discoveries. Quantum entanglement signatures that suggested not just observation, but a form of controlled evolutionary pressure. "We are an experiment," Elena concluded, "and we may be approaching the final phase of that experiment." The room was a crucible of tension. Disbelief warred with the cold, hard evidence presented before them. Each official understood the implications. If Elena was correct, Humanity was not merely being watched. They were being prepared for something. Something that would change everything. The conference room at the United Nations Special Research Facility felt more like a morgue than a place of scientific inquiry. Harsh fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the polished oak table, illuminating the faces of 6 senior officials whose expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Dr. Elena Rodriguez knew she was walking a razor's edge. Her fingers, calloused from years of fieldwork, traced the edge of a holographic display that seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Quantum-encrypted data fragments danced across the projection, anomalies that defied conventional explanation. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "what I'm about to present will fundamentally challenge everything we understand about our place in the universe." Admiral Thomas Keegan, a granite-faced veteran with more decorations than most museums, leaned back in his chair. "Doctor, we've heard extraordinary claims before. Your reputation precedes you, and not always favorably." Elena knew exactly what he meant. 10 years ago, her groundbreaking research into quantum archaeological signatures had been systematically discredited. 2 of her research team had died in what was ruled a laboratory accident. She knew better. The holographic display shifted, revealing a series of intricate data patterns. Each fragment was a piece of a complex puzzle, signals that didn't originate from any known human or terrestrial source. "These are not random transmissions," Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. "These are structured communications, deliberately masked to appear as background radiation. But they're not. They're surveillance logs." A murmur rippled through the room. Dr. Marcus Holloway, the facility's chief scientific advisor, leaned forward, his cybernetic eye, a replacement after a classified incident, flickered with enhanced processing, analyzing the data in real time. "Impossible," he muttered, but his tone suggested otherwise. Elena knew the weight of her next words would determine everything. She activated the final layer of encryption, a technique she'd developed from her father's unfinished research, a technique that had cost him his life. A holographic display exploded into a 3-dimensional map of stellar coordinates. Intricate lines connected various points, forming a network that was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. "We are being observed," Elena stated flatly. "And not just observed. Cataloged, analyzed, potentially controlled." The room fell silent. Admiral Keegan's fingers drummed against the table. "Controlled by whom?" "The Zornak Collective," Elena replied. Her pronunciation was perfect, a result of years of studying intercepted communications. A civilization so advanced that our entire technological history would be less than a footnote in their archives. She brought up a series of spectral analyses, quantum signature comparisons that showed deliberate interference patterns in human technological development. Moments of innovation, calculated setbacks, a chess game played across decades, with humanity as unwitting pawns. "Look here," she said, highlighting a specific data cluster. "Every major technological breakthrough in the last 50 years, quantum computing, advanced materials science, genetic research, shows signs of subtle manipulation. Not direct intervention, but guidance." Dr. Holloway's cybernetic eye was now fully engaged, processing information at speeds that would make supercomputers look archaic. "These interference patterns, they're too precise to be random, but the complexity suggests something beyond simple observation." Elena's next revelation would push them past the point of no return. "My parents didn't die in a research accident," she said quietly. "They were getting too close to understanding this network. Their work in quantum archaeology was tracking something the Zornak wanted to remain hidden." A personal data projection materialized, fragments of her parents' last research, annotated with her own discoveries. Quantum entanglement signatures that suggested not just observation, but a form of controlled evolutionary pressure. "We are an experiment," Elena concluded, "and we may be approaching the final phase of that experiment." The room was a crucible of tension. disbelief forward with the cold, hard evidence presented before them. Each official understood the implications. If Elena was correct, humanity was not merely being washed. They were being prepared for something. Something that would change everything. The Lagos Quantum Research Hub looked nothing like a traditional laboratory. Nestled in a repurposed shipping container complex on the outskirts of the city, it was a testament to Dr. Aisha O'Keefe's revolutionary approach to scientific innovation. Holographic displays flickered with impossible calculations. Quantum entanglement circuits, each one a work of art that would make traditional computer engineers weep, lined the walls. Here, science was not just a discipline. It was an act of defiance. Aisha's fingers danced across a haptic interface, her dark skin glistening with a thin layer of sweat. 3 days, 72 hours of continuous work. The kind of marathon that would have destroyed lesser minds. "Come on," she muttered. "Show me what you're hiding." The current project was more than just a breakthrough in quantum communication. It was a deliberate attempt to crack a communication network that shouldn't exist. Zornak transmission fragments, intercepted by a global network of hackers, researchers, and rogue intelligence operatives, formed a puzzle that defied conventional understanding. A notification ping, encrypted, military-grade security that would make most national intelligence agencies look like amateurs. Captain Marcus Chen. The message was brief. Encrypted. Dangerous. "I need your worst," it read. And I mean that literally. Aisha's lips curved into a smile. She understood exactly what he meant. Her team was a collection of scientific outcasts. Brilliant minds who had been systematically discredited, pushed to the margins of academic and technological research. A Nigerian quantum physicist, a Korean neural network specialist, an Indian cryptography expert who had been expelled from 3 different universities. They were humanity's true cutting edge. The quantum communication network they were developing was more than just a technological breakthrough. It was a weapon. A method of communication that could potentially bypass, or better yet, hijack, the sophisticated surveillance networks they suspected the Zornak were using. Each breakthrough came with a cost. 2 of her previous research assistants had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her primary research grant had been mysteriously revoked. Academic journals refused to publish her work. They were trying to silence her, which only made her more determined. The current prototype looked like organized chaos. Quantum entanglement circuits intertwined with biological neural network interfaces. Traditional computing paradigms were thrown out the window. This was something entirely new. A breakthrough that would make the Zornak realize humanity was far from a simple observation subject. Her primary research assistant, Dr. Kwesi Addo, entered the lab. His augmented reality glasses projected complex mathematical models that seemed to dance in the air. "We've got a problem," he said. "Someone's been tracking our research, and I don't mean the usual government surveillance." Aisha didn't need to ask who. The Zornak had eyes everywhere, or so they thought. "Let them watch," she replied. "We're about to give them something to really look at." The quantum communication prototype was more than just a technological device. It was a middle finger to an alien civilization that thought it could control human potential. Each circuit told a story of human ingenuity. Each line of code was a declaration of independence. Outside the lab, Lagos continued its chaotic dance. Street vendors, motorcycle taxis, the constant pulse of a city that refused to be contained. Inside, Aisha O'Keefe was writing humanity's next evolutionary chapter, one quantum byte at a time. The final calibration began. Quantum entanglement circuits hummed with potential. Biological neural networks synchronized. Something was about to change. And the Zornak had no idea what was coming. The first Zornak ships breached Earth's atmosphere at precisely 300 hours GMT. They weren't massive, not by galactic standards. But each vessel represented a technological leap so far beyond human comprehension that it made nuclear-era weapons look like children's toys. Captain Marcus Chen washed from the underground command center, his neural interface crackling with real-time tactical data. The holographic displays showed multiple contact points: Beijing, Sao Paulo, Cape Town, Lagos. The aliens weren't interested in a traditional invasion. They were sending a message. Tactical analysis, he barked. Lieutenant Jack Rodriguez, seated at the communication hub, looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His fingers danced across quantum-encrypted interfaces that would make most intelligence agencies weep with envy. "They're not here to destroy," Jack said, his voice a mixture of terror and fascination. "They're here to assess." The communication came moments later. A transmission so advanced it made human broadcast technologies look like smoke signals. A single message transmitted across every conceivable frequency. Subi met. KT Gigoriz. NT Gigoriz. Marcus felt something burn inside him. Not fear, not anger. Something deeper. Dr. O'Keefe. He spoke into his quantum comlink. "Are you ready?" 3,000 miles away, in her Lagos research facility, Aisha's voice crackled back. "Been ready my entire life." The quantum communication network they'd developed wasn't just a communication system. It was a weapon. A method of communication that could potentially bypass, or better yet, hijack, the sophisticated alien surveillance networks. The first wave of Zornak probes began their systematic sweep. Advanced sensors that could detect the molecular composition of a human body from kilometers away. Quantum entanglement scanners that could read biological signatures with terrifying precision. They were looking for something, searching for a specific pattern. What they didn't know was that humanity was no longer playing by their rules. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring from a classified research station in the Andes, began the first phase of their counterattack. Years of research, decades of preparation, her parents' unfinished work. It all came down to this moment. Quantum interference pattern activated, she reported. The Zornak ships began to experience the first signs of system disruption. Subtle at first. A microscopic perturbation in their quantum communication networks, something that shouldn't be possible. Jack Rodriguez's systems began to sing. Not with human-made signals, but with something entirely new. A communication method that was part technology, part something else entirely. "They're confused," he said, a hint of savage joy in his voice. "We're not responding the way their models predicted." The alien ships began to adjust, recalibrate. But each adjustment was met with another layer of quantum interference. It was like watching a complex chess match where the board itself was changing with each move. Marcus watched the tactical display. The alien vessels, each one a technological marvel that represented centuries of advanced engineering, began to lose cohesion. Not destroyed, not defeated, but fundamentally challenged. "This is for David," Marcus whispered. Aisha's voice came through the quantum link. Initiating Phase 2. The quantum communication network she developed wasn't just a method of communication. It was a virus. A technological ecosystem that could adapt, learn, and most importantly, resist. The Zornak had made a fundamental miscalculation. They thought humanity was a species to be studied. They were about to learn humanity was a species that fought back. As the first wave of alien probes began to experience systemic failures, something became abundantly clear. This was not an invasion. This was humanity's first real declaration of independence. The Zornak Collective's primary analysis chamber was a marvel of biological technological integration. Crystalline structures pulsed with thought patterns more complex than entire human civilizations. Archival coordinator Krillax watched the human resistance with a mixture of scientific fascination and growing concern. "Impossible," they vocalized. A sound that translated across quantum frequencies as both a statement and an emotional complex that humans would never fully comprehend. The human resistance wasn't just fighting. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of engagement. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood this better than anyone. Her team had spent years studying the psychological warfare potential hidden within human communication patterns. While the Zornak relied on precise, predictable information networks, humans thrived on chaos, misdirection, and unpredictability. "It's not about the technology," Elena explained to Marcus during their encrypted quantum conference. "It's about the narrative." The current operation was unlike anything in military history. They weren't just fighting. They were systematically dismantling the Zornak's understanding of conflict itself. Jack Rodriguez had developed a communication virus that was part technology, part psychological manipulation. Each transmission carried multiple layers of meaning, some designed to be understood, others intentionally obfuscated. It was like watching a linguistic quantum superposition, where meaning itself became a weapon. In the Lagos research facility, Aisha Okik monitored the global response. Citizen networks were spontaneously organizing. Social media platforms became intelligence-gathering tools. Amateur radio operators intercepted and decoded alien transmissions. Humanity was transforming into a single distributed intelligence network. The Zornak had a critical weakness. They understood patterns. They could predict statistical probabilities with terrifying accuracy. But human irrationality, that was something entirely different. Marcus Chen's tactical team began implementing what they called cognitive disruption protocols. Military units would deliberately make choices that defied all strategic logic. Communication channels would suddenly switch. Entirely fabricated mission parameters would be broadcast. False flag operations became an art form. "We're teaching them that humans are fundamentally unpredictable," Marcus explained to Colonel Reyes. "Every time they think they've understood us, we change the rules." The psychological warfare went deeper. Elena's research team began releasing carefully constructed disinformation campaigns. Historical records were subtly altered. Cultural narratives were manipulated. They were creating a version of human history that would be impossible for the Zornak to fully comprehend. Krulax watched in mounting frustration. The human resistance defied every predictive model. Each time they attempted to categorize human behavior, the parameters would shift. It was like trying to catch water with a quantum net. They are reorganizing their entire cognitive framework in real time. One of Krulax's analytical companions noted, "The translation carried a sense of both admiration and terror." The most brilliant aspect of the human resistance was its distributed nature. There was no central command, no single point of failure. Each individual became a potential node of resistance. A teacher in Mumbai, a programmer in Sao Paulo, a farmer in rural Kenya. They were all part of something larger. Aisha's quantum communication network transformed into something beyond a technological tool. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of human potential. Each transmission carried not just information, but emotion, hope, defiance, and fundamental refusal to be categorized. "We are not your experiment," became an unofficial global motto. The Zornak had studied humanity for generations. They thought they understood human potential. They had calculated every possible response, mapped every potential evolutionary pathway. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. As the first wave of psychological disruption reached critical mass, something fundamental began to change. The alien observation network, once a precise, calculated system, started to fracture. Humanity wasn't just resisting. They were rewriting the very concept of resistance. The Galactic Assembly Chamber was a marvel of Zen architectural design, a spherical construct that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. Delegates from over 2,000 sentient species watched in collective disbelief as the human situation unfolded. Archival Coordinator Krulax stood at the central projection, their multispectral form rippling with barely contained agitation. The holographic display showed humanity's resistance in real time, a chaotic network that defied every known model of collective behavior. "This is unprecedented," announced Zilora, the quantum diplomatic arbiter from the Andromeda Concordance. Her crystalline form shifted through multiple translucent colors, a visible manifestation of her species' emotional complexity. The human resistance had done more than challenge the Zornak. They had fundamentally altered the galactic political landscape. Colonel Sarah Rice watched from a classified monitoring station, her neural implants processing multiple communication streams simultaneously. She understood what the other species couldn't. Humanity was playing an entirely different game. The strategic assault was multidimensional. While military units conducted targeted operations, scientific teams were dismantling the very theoretical foundations of Zornak observation technologies. Aisha O'Keefe's quantum communication network had become something far beyond a communication tool. It was a living, adaptive intelligence system. They're not just fighting, Dr. Elena Rodriguez noted during a quantum-encrypted briefing. They're evolving in real time. The Galactic Assembly's historical records showed countless examples of technological species being cataloged, controlled, integrated. The Zornak had perfected this process over millennia. Humanity was the first to fundamentally reject the entire premise. Marcus Chen's tactical teams had transformed warfare into a form of cognitive jiu-jitsu. Military operations became less about territorial control and more about systematic disruption. Each engagement was designed not just to resist, but to fundamentally challenge the Zornak's understanding of conflict. Jack Rodriguez had weaponized information itself. Communication channels became adaptive labyrinths that would reconfigure themselves the moment an external intelligence attempted to analyze them. It was like watching a living, breathing organism that could change its entire structural composition at will. Other galactic species began to take notice. The Quantum Diplomatic Arbiter's Declaration carried universal significance. The human response challenges fundamental principles of interstellar observation and potential integration. Translation: they were impressed. Krulax knew the situation was spiraling beyond control. The human resistance wasn't just fighting back. They were exposing fundamental weaknesses in the Zornak's millennia-old methodological approach to species categorization. "We have miscalculated," Krulax announced to the assembly, their vocalization a complex harmonic that conveyed multiple layers of meaning: concern, fascination, a growing sense of professional respect. The resistance wasn't centralized. It wasn't hierarchical. It was a distributed, adaptive network that could reorganize itself faster than any external intelligence could comprehend. Schools became research centers. Amateur radio operators became intelligence gatherers. Social media transformed into real-time strategic communication platforms. Humanity was turning its entire civilization into a resistance mechanism. Colonel Rice understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't just about defeating the Zornak. This was about proving that humanity's strength lay in its fundamental unpredictability. "We're not a species to be controlled," she muttered, watching the global resistance networks pulse with energy. "We're a species that rewrites the rules." The Galactic Assembly watched in collective amazement as humanity did something no observed species had ever accomplished. They weren't just resisting categorization. They were redefining the entire concept of collective intelligence. As the first phase of resistance reached its critical point, the universe held its collective breath. Humanity was about to make galactic history. The final battle wasn't fought in a single location. It was a war that raged across quantum dimensions, communication networks, and the very fabric of technological reality. Captain Marcus Chen stood in the primary command center, a mobile platform that existed simultaneously in multiple geographical locations. His neural interface hummed with a symphony of tactical data, each millisecond a complex dance of human innovation and survival. "Initiating quantum cascade," he commanded. Dr. Aisha O'Keefe's voice crackled through the quantum communication network. "Quantum disruption matrices are online. They won't know what hit them." The Zornak command ship, a technological marvel that represented millennia of evolutionary engineering, hung in Earth's orbit like a crystalline nightmare. Its quantum communication systems were so advanced that they could predict potential outcomes with terrifying precision. Or so they thought. Elena Rodriguez had spent years preparing for this moment. Her research team had discovered the fundamental weakness in the Zornak's observational technology. It wasn't about defeating their systems. It was about making those systems fundamentally incomprehensible. Initiating cognitive interference protocol, Elena reported. Jack Rodriguez's communication warfare team began their most complex operation. It wasn't just about sending signals. It was about creating a communication matrix so complex, so layered with meaning and misdirection, that it would overwhelm the most sophisticated alien intelligence systems. The first wave of the attack was psychological. Massive disinformation campaigns, quantum encrypted messages that carried multiple simultaneous meanings, communication that was simultaneously true and false, a linguistic quantum superposition that would break the Zornak's predictive algorithms. Krelax, the primary Zornak coordinator, watched in mounting horror. Their sophisticated prediction matrices began to fail. Each computational model collapsed faster than it could be reconstructed. "This is impossible," Krelax vocalized, a sound that carried millennia of collective intelligence and growing fear. The human attack was multidimensional. Military units conducted precision strikes that defied all conventional tactical understanding. Scientific teams introduced technological viruses that rewrote the fundamental communication protocols of the alien systems. But the true weapon was something far more profound. Humanity itself. Every citizen became a node of resistance. Amateur radio operators, school children, programmers, artists. Each person contributed to a distributed intelligence network that was evolving faster than any external system could comprehend. Marcus Chen's tactical display showed something unprecedented. The alien systems weren't just being defeated, they were being fundamentally transformed. "We're not destroying them," he realized. "We're teaching them a new way of existing." The Zornak command ship began to experience systemic failures, not through physical destruction, but through a complete breakdown of its predictive and communication capabilities. It was like watching a highly sophisticated computer trying to process a form of mathematics that didn't follow any known rules. Aisha's quantum communication network had become something beyond technology. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of human potential. Each transmission carried not just information, but emotion, hope, defiance, and fundamental refusal to be categorized. Elena's final protocol was elegant in its complexity. They weren't just fighting. They were rewriting the fundamental understanding of intelligence itself. "Cognitive cascade initiated," she reported. The Zornak systems began to fragment, not through destruction, but through a complete reimagining of their own existential parameters. Prediction algorithms collapsed. Communication networks dissolved into pure potential. Jack Rodriguez's final transmission was a masterpiece of cognitive warfare. A message so complex, so multilayered, that it would take centuries to fully decode. "We are not your experiment," it read. "We are the experiment." As the Zornak command systems began their final dissolution, something remarkable happened. They didn't just fail. They transformed. Humanity had done more than defeat an alien civilization. They had shown the universe a new way of being. 5 years after the confrontation, the world was unrecognizable. The Galactic Assembly convened in a new diplomatic space, a quantum-entangled conference chamber that existed simultaneously across multiple planetary locations. Representatives from thousands of civilizations watched as humanity presented its most radical transformation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, no longer just a researcher, but a key architect of a new galactic paradigm. Her quantum archaeological research had become the foundation of an entirely new understanding of collective intelligence. "We are not a species to be studied," she began, her voice carrying across dimensional communication networks. "We are a living demonstration of potential." The remnants of the Zornak collective, now more of a transformed philosophical network than a traditional civilization, listened with what could only be described as reverence. Krelax, once a coordinator of galactic observation, now served as a primary liaison in understanding the human phenomenon. Captain Marcus Chen had become something between a diplomat and a strategic advisor. The military structures that once defined human conflict had been completely reimagined. Every citizen was now part of a global, No, Galactic, adaptive network. Aisha O'Keefe's quantum communication technologies had revolutionized how civilizations understood information exchange. What was once seen as a communication network was now understood as a living, evolving intelligence ecosystem. The changes weren't just technological. They were fundamental. Educational systems were transformed. Schools were no longer places of information transfer, but adaptive learning environments that responded in real time to individual and collective potential. Every human became a node of potential innovation. Jack Rodriguez had developed communication protocols that allowed for multidimensional understanding. Languages were no longer barriers but bridges, adaptive systems that could simultaneously translate and transform meaning. Colonel Sarah Reyes oversaw a new form of global defense, not based on military might, but on collective adaptability. The old concept of national borders had dissolved, replaced by a global network of collaborative potential. The Zornak thought they were observing an experiment, Marcus often said. They didn't realize they were witnessing the birth of a new form of intelligence. The technological advances were staggering. Quantum communication networks that could predict and respond to potential futures. Adaptive learning systems that could reconstruct entire fields of knowledge in moments. Medical technologies that didn't just heal, but could fundamentally reimagine biological potential. But the most profound changes were philosophical. Humanity had proven that intelligence was not about predictability, but about potential. Not about control, but about continuous transformation. The Galactic Assembly had been fundamentally restructured. What was once a hierarchical system of observation and control was now a collaborative network of mutual potential. Other civilizations looked to humans not as a species to be managed, but as a model of evolutionary possibility. Elena's final presentation was a masterpiece of scientific and philosophical insight. "We are not an endpoint," she explained. "We are a process, a continuous, adaptive, unpredictable process of becoming." The quantum displays behind her showed the transformation, not just of human civilization, but of the entire understanding of intelligence itself. Biological networks, technological systems, social structures, all viewed as interconnected, adaptive ecosystems. Krulax, representing the transformed Zornak collective, spoke next. Their communication was no longer a transmission, but a multidimensional expression of understanding. "We miscalculated," they expressed, a statement that carried millennia of collective learning. Humanity is not a species to be understood. Humanity is understanding itself. As the conference concluded, something remarkable happened. The boundaries between species, between biological and technological intelligence, began to blur. Humanity had done more than survive an alien observation. They had redefined the very concept of potential. The universe watched, not as an observer, but as a participant in an ongoing miraculous transformation.